Scotland and the rest of the world have declared a climate emergency. Global emissions are destroying our planet. If we carry on as we are, it's going to get worse. But as we tackle one of the biggest challenges of our generation, there's one vital part of the conversation missing. About 4/5 of Scotland's carbon footprint comes from the products and materials we manufacture, use and dispose of. The average Scot consumes 18.4 tonnes of materials every year, and scientists would say a more sustainable level is around 8 tonnes per person per year.
If we don't take this moment and this opening up of this conversation about a different economic system, today's generations and future generations will never, ever forgive us.
There is nothing else to do if we fail in this. And quite frankly, if we do, the planet is not going to care how much our economy is growing.
So the advisory group was looking at this green growth agenda that essentially says we can decouple economic growth from the environmental impact, and we can call that green growth because we'll still have GDP growth, but it won't be doing damage to the planet. The problem is that so much of the evidence shows that that's just not possible to the extent that's required. What we need to do is design our economic systems that are not dependent on growth in the first place. We can't rely on growth or have an economy designed around growth to serve what we're really after, which is good quality of lives for people on a sustainable planet. And so into that space, the wellbeing economy agenda seemed to fit really nicely.
Wellbeing is spending quality time as a family, and that would mean either you're sitting for meals together. Ever since I had my kids, I've only worked part-time, and even that, sometimes I've had to stop work completely to prioritise the kids. Healthy family, I would say, is much more important than having that extra cash.
One of the key elements of a wellbeing economy is about saying it's humanity that should determine economics, rather than the other way around. So you can imagine if someone in Glasgow, for example, here was walking down the street in an economy that was much more aligned to what people on planet need. Firstly, those streets would be safe. There'd be more green space. There'd be local shops, probably where they know the shop owner. They might be worker cooperatives even, where the people working for those firms own the firm. There'd probably be community gardens that they could stop in their way and maybe pick some carrots or an apple and sit down on a bench and have a conversation with people. And they'd have time to do that because they wouldn't be having to work 3 jobs just to put food on the table. And so the wellbeing economy doesn't just bring a different vision, it also brings hope that that change is possible because it's made up of people and activists and scholars and business people and networks who are already rolling up their sleeves and putting these sorts of changes into practice.
Improving the rental market and improving housing in general is absolutely vital to the wellbeing economy. There's very little more fundamental than having a secure, affordable, warm roof over your head. So if we can't get housing right, we can't get anything else right in the wellbeing economy. Right now the rental system is very heavily weighted towards landlords, and it has been moving that way for many years. A lot of tenants have very insecure tenures. They can be removed from their rented property with very little notice and very little reason. They're often paying very high rents, especially compared to what an owner-occupier would pay in equivalent for a mortgage. So you have people who end up getting trapped in the rented sector because they can't pay these higher rents and simultaneously save for a deposit to buy a house.
I literally earn money to pay for childcare and there's very little left over to live, never mind put aside anything for a deposit for a mortgage. So I have no choice, I have to rent. There's been consistently problems with heating. There's several places through the house you can actually feel the breeze coming through. The biggest one was probably the boiler, when we were left without heating or hot water for the entire winter. I was very fortunate in that for the first maybe 7 years that I lived there, we didn't see any increases in rent whatsoever. But then I had the situation with the boiler, and within a month of that, I got my letter saying that your rent will be going up by £50 a month. And then when that year was passed, I got another letter saying your rent is going up by £50 a month. I did get a letter from my landlord assuring me that it was only so much due to the fact that we'd lived there so long without any rent increases. If that had been spread out over those 7 years, that would have been so much easier. I'm not actually demonising, because in many ways I think a big part of the issue is that they're not incredibly well informed.
Very notably, we did a joint paper with Living Rent on a system of rent controls that could work in Scotland. These rent controls would be based directly on the quality of the house in question, and with an intention of incentivising improvements to that house. It would also secure tenants against year-on-year rent rises, and ultimately should encourage landlords to bring their houses up to the standards we expect for the Green New Deal. We're also looking at improving the general housing infrastructure in Scotland. Scotland's houses are expensive, they're small, they're cold, they are not ready for the Green New Deal.
We need to have a mindset, a change of mindset. And the big driver for consumption is how cheap everything is and how easy, how disposable everything is. Clothes, you can go online now and have clothes delivered the next day and wear it once and discard it. This rattan type imitation furniture. One day I'll go out of fashion and it'll be some other thing they're looking for. And your mum will be binning that and asking me to go and buy something else.
So circular economy is about saying, one, let's reduce the amount of stuff that we use and consume, but when we do need to use stuff and consume stuff and produce stuff, let's do so in a way that redesigns something. So it could be your phone, we could repackage that and utilise the minerals and the resources that are in that. So it's about saying we're going to keep the materials in our production circulating, and that requires engineers, it requires creativity and creative designers.
Young people have really creative and ambitious ideas about tackling some of the problems that we have within our linear economy. There's such a big opportunity there to really harness the skills and energy in young people in Scotland to push that towards creating a circular economy, and I think that would also give young people a real sense of hopefulness that they can actually contribute to solving some of these environmental issues that we're facing. Claire's innovation around reusable packaging and reusable solutions for packaging is so exciting, and it shows that young people have really creative and ambitious ideas.
I was so frustrated by the fact that I could see the problems mounting up in an environmental sense around me, and yet I was not spending a minute of my day, my working day, tackling them. We actually launched a campaign to email all the brands that we had in our bathroom cabinets to ask them why they weren't using reusable packaging. And some of the responses we got back were really helpful, actually, because they really helped us get to the heart of the problem very quickly. So one of the things that we were told was that packaging, in order to be safe for consumers, needs to be stamped with a batch code. And that's done usually with laser ink to make sure it never comes off. That becomes quite challenging when you're reusing packaging because you need to figure out a way to get rid of that stamp and re-stamp it. We also had businesses saying that they were really struggling to identify what kind of packaging and the design. A lot of different things need to happen to that packaging in its life cycle, and they don't know if it's going to last 100 times or just 10, and how do you design for that? And then businesses said, well, I have an inventory management system. As soon as I'm reusing packaging, I have to think about it coming back. We realized if we give every single piece of packaging a unique ID, then you can, it's almost like a passport. So every time it gets filled with a new product or cleaned or goes out to a customer, it gets another stamp in its passport.
So all the products are presented in bamboo, glass and aluminium packaging with very minimal plastic. We are really excited to be embarking on this project with Reith in order to enable us to reuse the packaging. Hi!
Hey Mel, how are you?
I'm good.
You said that you were setting up the scanner.
Luckily the second phone that I've got, it's okay. So is it literally just a case of I can start putting these on now and then just going for it?
I hope that it's relatively intuitive.
You can use a smartphone to scan these QR codes which will be on the packaging, which then links to the Reith platform and enables the tracking facility, which is exciting.
So I think it's really important that we continue to invest in young innovation because the perspective that you have on the world is quite different. You're possibly more up to speed with the latest technology, and it's really that systems thinking and joining the dots that's really critical. And I think when you don't know how things are done, you're able to paint a new picture of how they could be done.
Scotland has set a net zero target for 2045. A net zero meaning that there are no net emissions of greenhouse gases from Scotland. It's difficult to overstate how ambitious this target is. It means having no petrol and diesel vehicles on the roads. It means having no gas for heating, for central heating, and about over 80% of our homes are heated in this way. So the work that I'm involved in is working with cities, with local authorities to support them in delivering their climate goals. But when we're talking about delivering climate goals, we're talking about fundamentally changing the system within which the city operates. The City of Edinburgh Council is developing out a very large swathe of North Edinburgh called the Granton Waterfront Development. And that's the work that some of the work that I am involved in with Edinburgh is supporting them in terms of developing some of the ideas and testing some of those ideas in practice as to how you can build new net zero developments.
This project will be a first for Edinburgh, and at scale it will be a first for Scotland. In the context of a climate emergency, the construction industry really has to step up to the plate. This provides us with a major opportunity to demonstrate our ability and our desire to respond.
Granton is an example of a new development that supports well-being, green spaces, active travel, rather than just thinking about it as a sort of housing development.
The National Galleries of Scotland wanted to be part of a vibrant community and an area of regeneration in northwest Edinburgh. Looking after fine art requires us to control humidity, temperature levels, which traditionally has required very high energy solutions such as air conditioning. Using the passive house building standard, we can get those levels of temperature and humidity through very low energy solutions. The Artworks project, of course, isn't just about building a building that's efficient. It's also about the journey we're on. So, for example, on the Artworks site, we're fortunate enough to have installed a mobile orchard unit. We've been working closely with local schools and nursery groups using that space.
Trees!
We have some wonderful paintings of orchards and of farming, so we thought it would be a wonderful way to introduce children to the collection and children to the opportunities here that the orchard offers. So we're really trying to build links now before the building has even started.
Should we make a pond? Yeah. Okay. I wonder how long it'll take to fill. The area that we live in scores quite highly on the Scottish SIMD index. And there are a lot of children who don't always get a lot of opportunities to explore outside. For me, it's a fantastic idea. It's just a dead space just now. And it's really, really important that the community has places to go, but that also the community is involved in developing those spaces so there's a sense of ownership.
It's very easy to write papers to talk about the theory of trying to get to net zero, indeed of pledging net zero targets, climate goals. It's much harder in practice. We do not have all of the answers right now as to what is going to work best in which context. So actually we've got to go and test them, and that's what we've been doing as EIT Climate Kick with our partners like the City of Edinburgh Council, is to say let's go and learn at scale by trialling something, and once we've got that we can learn fast from it and share that learning very rapidly across many other places, cities, urban areas.
My goal for Scotland, really the targets for the Green New Deal are out to 2045, which by coincidence is roughly when someone my age is just about ready to start thinking about retirement. So the Green New Deal really is my retirement plan for Scotland. I want to live in a Scotland that has averted the climate emergency, and we can sit back and see the results.
The social health and well-being will be greatly improved within Scotland if there was a broader range of equality, the acceptance of more cultures.
not planning on it just now, we could end up raising kids here, and as my dad said earlier, it's a good place to raise kids, but you want it to be the best possible place to raise kids.
It's really exciting to be part of this because we are creating the type of future that I want to live in. So how do we value positive types of work that really capture people's imagination but also create positive results in society?
It's no longer a question of why. We know that time is now to transform the economic system. The question is, do we have the imagination to think about an economy that's better than growth?